Oh boy, this is going to be a rough one. When I first stepped into Living World Season 4, I had no idea what kind of emotion was going to be waiting for me and what I would be walking into. Looking back now, it's honestly one of the most intense, heartbreaking, thrilling, and soul-punching journeys that I've ever experienced in Guild Wars 2, period. Season 4 is raw. It's really rough to take in. It's layered. It's definitely personal. There are a lot of personal ties here, and it never once let me just catch my breath for a moment. It felt like something was happening all the time. To me, every moment feels like ArenaNet was just whispering in my ear saying, hey man, do you want some emotional damage for today? Have you had enough? Do you want some more? And I felt like the whole time I was just like the Hide the Pain Harold meme, where I was just sitting there like nodding and smiling through my tears. Like, I'm having a good time, I promise. From Aurene facing her destiny to Joko's disaster of an ego trip, I mean, that guy is crazy, to the heart-destroying arcs with Taimi, Blish, and even Bram, to be honest, and that's something I thought I would never say. Season 4 just doesn't pull any punches at all. It fully commits to every narrative climax that it sets out to put forward. And as the commander, you're in the driving seat. You don't really feel like you're just watching it play out, you're actually living through it. So today, that's why I want to break down why Living World Season 4 is, in my opinion, one of the most emotional roller coasters in MMO storytelling. With that said, let's jump straight into it. So from the moment the season starts, I was hit with an overwhelming sense that Aurene's childhood and the innocence that we've come to know in Path of Fire, this is just gone now. She is growing up, and growing up really fast, and quite honestly for the worst possible reasons. Whether we like it or not at this point, she has to kill an Elder Dragon. That's it. Or she has to die trying to do it. Aurene's bond with me became one of the heaviest emotional anchors of the season. Every single vision she shares, every fear that she reveals to you, and even every attempt she makes to understand her future, it all paints a picture of someone who never got the chance to be anything except a weapon that her fate forced her to be. Now, on the other side of the coin, there is Kralkatorrik. Kralkatorrik is not just an Elder Dragon, and not just a villain. It's very easy to confuse this. He is instead a creature drowning in an ocean of corrupted magic, essentially. You have a cocktail of Zaitan's death magic, Mordramoth's mind magic, and Balthazar's war magic, all just eating away at him from the inside. His torment is constant, suffocating, and horrifying, and not to make this too deep, but as someone who has always struggled with ADHD and a real confusion in my mind over the years, this really hit home. The constant noise and loudness and essentially having your own systems taken over by something completely out of your control. You see, he's not just hunting Aurene, he's been driven to hunt her. She is the only thing powerful enough to end his pain. And if I'm being totally honest, I fully believe he knew the outcome of the fight before he even started it. I personally feel that this was self-termination, and that makes every confrontation between them feel tragic and not just terrifying or meaningless combat. Watching Aurene stare down a creature who is both her greatest enemy and essentially a mirror image of what she might become really hit home. Season 4 makes me realize something chilling. Aurene's fate isn't just a choice. At this point, it's a burden. Now, onto a lighter-hearted topic, let's talk about Joko, the undead emperor who somehow manages to be horrifying but absolutely hilarious at the same time. I made this similar remark in a previous video, and it still stands true. Season 4 takes Joko from a background threat to a full-blown antagonist with a huge flair. This guy mocks you from the moment that he comes onto your screen. He'll even leave you taunting letters. He monologues like he's auditioning for some sort of Broadway show. It's quite hilarious. What I was really surprised about is the emotional whiplash that you experience with Joko, where you go from laughing at him to kind of being somewhat horrified of his actions and being slightly terrified of him in general. For example, one minute you're laughing at the jokes that he's coming out with, and then the next minute he unleashes the Scarab Plague. Really not cool. We had entire populations that were wiped out by this. Cities were falling, thousands of innocent lives turned into, well, nothing but dust and rot. And to be honest, this is Joko at his worst. Chaos, cruelty, and definitely domination without any restraint for human life. And there were definitely a few moments throughout this season where I sat back and thought, do you know what? Joko, as much as he is a bit of a meme within the community, he's definitely a monster. There's no doubt about it. His downfall was very, very satisfying to me, though. Watching Aurene basically just eat him was really, really cool. It kind of felt like poetic justice in many ways. But even with him gone, his legacy just doesn't end. He just stays around like a bad smell. His actions definitely ripple across the entire season, if I'm honest, and he forces the world to unite, but at a really heavy cost. We did mention it briefly, but the Scarab Plague sends essentially the entire world into panic, and you're just thrust into the center of a crisis that feels bigger than anything that has been thrown at you before. It really became apparent quite early on that you're not just battling monsters in this season, you are rallying nations from Elona, Tyria, the Olmechan, the Pact, the Awakened, and even people who normally wouldn't fight side by side are forced into an alliance by sheer necessity. When you walk through some of the areas that are devastated by the plague, see the bodies and hear the NPCs mourning, it feels different. The world feels fragile, it feels real, and to me, this is the epitome of what Living World should strive for. And Living World Season 4 truly feels like a war story, not a battle here. This is not a battle. This is a war, and you, as the main protagonist, are caught right in the middle of it. One thing that I really wasn't ready for was, in the midst of all the chaos, Season 4 just drops two of my favourite additions to the cast out of nowhere, Gorick and Blish. It's quite apparent early on that Gorick is this kind of socially awkward scientist that I really didn't honestly know that I needed in my life at all. His energy is kind of chaotic and messy, and he's definitely unfiltered. He kind of doesn't know when to cut in or cut out. He's got loads of brilliant ideas, but he really just lacks any type of social awareness at all. For me, at least, he kind of took the most intense moments of the story and just kind of made it feel a bit more human, you know, kind of took the edge off a little bit. And then, of course, there's Blish, and oh man, Blish, I have never felt so much emotion for a golem before in my entire life. I am really not sure how ArenaNet made me care so much about a little robot, but you guys have really pulled it off. Blish was thoughtful, kind, level-headed, and really his backstory is kind of sad. He's a man who turned himself into a golem to survive, but somehow still feels more human than most people, which is kind of weird to say. Now, between the two, their dynamic is just so genuine right off the bat. You really get a feel for it. It's a perfect mix of sibling rivalry. For myself, I've got a brother that we grew up together, and I see a lot in these two, between us two as well. They've got a real deep affection for each other, and they really make every scene stand out that they're in. However, between you and I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you know exactly where this is going. When Blish made his choice, when he decided to sacrifice himself to place the tracker on Kralkatorrik, that hurt me, man. I just couldn't for a while, you know? Even before the moment actually happened, the tension builds so perfectly that I just knew something awful was going to happen. But the knowing doesn't make it any easier. Then, listening to Gorick desperately plead with him, hearing the fear, the grief, the helplessness in his voice, it just kind of broke me a little bit. Even Blish's last words are simple, they're humble, and really they just hit home. He's not trying to be a hero, he's not seeking any glory, he's just doing the one thing he knows that will save the people that he loves. And the worst part about all of this, Gorick's grief isn't theatrical, it's quiet, it's raw. You can really see him processing things in his own time and not being overly vocal about it. It's just not in his nature to process grief this way, and to be honest, I'm not even sure if he knows how to. Blish's death at this point was one of the many emotional scenes that happen in Living World Season 4, and it comes from a place of love, not violence. This is a brother's final act, witnessed by someone who would have given anything to stop it. Then we had something that came out of nowhere. We had the Bram redemption arc. Like, what the hell? Season 3's Bram, and before, I would not have given him any time whatsoever. He was hot-headed, he was reckless, absolutely infuriating to be around. As I've made comments before, he genuinely caused me physical stress just by being on the screen. But Season 4 Bram, I'm not saying I like him, but I've definitely seen a different side to the struggles that Bram goes through. Watching him slowly rebuild trust, acknowledge his own mistakes, and genuinely try and be better, it felt honest. I feel like this is the story arc that he needed. It wasn't rushed, it wasn't forced. This is just a guy struggling with guilt, with grief, and a heavy weight of responsibility. One of the most touching moments is when he talks with his mother in that memory scene. Oh my god. Seeing him open up, seeing that little piece of vulnerability break through, I was like, dude, where have you been this entire time? You're so much more enjoyable to be around when your life is a mess. It reminded me that Bram isn't just a fiery, stubborn asshole. He's also just a kid who lost too much way too young. Not to mention, we also discovered he's terrified of spiders, which is also really, really funny. The idea of this huge Norn warrior standing toe-to-toe with elder dragons, trembling at the sight of an 8-legged critter was quite funny, to be honest. To me, this was a perfectly timed moment throughout the story. It really just kind of broke up the seriousness a little bit. And of course, I can't forget to mention the classic Dominic Toretto line that he drops of family right towards the end of the story. I just had to take a step back, and I was laughing so hard at that. In fairness to him, he had a couple of lines in season 4 which made me laugh, which was kind of odd. I kind of felt a bit ashamed, to be honest. Moving on, let's talk about Kralkatorrik's hunt for Aurene, because he isn't just chasing Aurene, he's really homing in on her. He's essentially drawn to her at this point. It's almost like he's compelled by a force that he just can't resist. This is where the writing shines. The season slowly reveals that elder dragons aren't just simple beasts, which we could probably kind of guess anyway. They're bound by cosmic forces. They're trapped in endless cycles of power and consumption. And as Kralkatorrik absorbs more corrupted magic, he becomes something worse than a dragon. He becomes a living storm, a tortured consciousness held together by pain and instinct alone. As I mentioned before, his hunt isn't just relentless and pointless, it's tragic. He is suffering, genuinely suffering constantly, unbearably, and only Aurene can end that suffering one way or another. Their connection feels meaningful. It feels inevitable in many ways, like two celestial bodies, these two huge beasts caught in the same orbit, entwined in the same fate. Now, we covered one wounding moment before, but let's just touch on the next, because the moment Aurene died, I still remember sitting in silence on my chair, jaw dropped to the ground. I didn't want it to be real. I didn't. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. It just hit me like someone had cut out a piece of my heart. Seeing her malformed shape with crystals piercing through her, I just didn't want to believe it. She wasn't just a character to me. She was this hope. You've seen her in her infancy grow into what she is now. She was pure, now so corrupted. And losing her really felt personal. The cinematic, the music, the dialogue, everything comes together so perfectly that it feels like a gut punch straight to the soul. And season 4 doesn't try and soften this blow. It really lingers and lets you feel it. It lets you feel the emptiness, the despair, and the absolute heartbreak. And for a while, and normally I'm pretty good at picking up on this, but I was genuinely convinced that she was just gone. That was it. Like, we are in deep at this point. Her rebirth, though, later on is awesome. Really, really great to watch. It's triumphant, it's deeply emotional, but nothing really truly erased the impact of that moment when she died. Now, in the middle of all this chaos, all this death and destruction, Taimi drops a bombshell that hits harder than any elder dragon could. She is not in remission. She's getting worse, and the disease she's been fighting her whole life is coming back with full force. Taimi is a character that I've come to know that always masks her fear with humor, who solves impossible problems and honestly lights up every single scene she's in. If you've watched any of my videos before, you'll know that I speak very highly of her. But there is something about hearing her voice crack even slightly that is just devastating. It reminds me that behind all of the jokes and the brilliant plans, she's still a kid dealing with the kind of pain that most people never experience. Season 4 used this moment to ground the story into a very harsh reality. Dragons and gods and cosmic magic are terrifying, don't get me wrong, but so is watching someone you love suffer. Slowly and silently, it's horrific. But to bring it all to summary, everything you've been through, from Joko, the plague, Aurene's visions, Bram's growth, the allied armies, Taimi's condition, Blish's sacrifice, and many more that I've not even managed to cover, everything builds towards the climatic confrontation with Kralkatorrik. And when it finally arrived, it was not what I thought it was going to be at all. I thought this was just going to be a boss battle, like many boss battles are in a lot of games, but this was honestly kind of beautiful in some ways, but just so sad. I felt a real sympathy to Kralkatorrik that I'd never felt before. I almost felt like my purpose of destroying Kralkatorrik was more of a service to the dragon itself than the people I'm trying to protect. The season ends with a transformation which was just jaw-dropping, and this is Aurine's transformation. But not only Aurine's transformation, this was a transformation for Tyria and for yourself as the main protagonist. And for the first time since playing this game, when the story closed and everything had kind of settled, I just sat there for a while and just thought about previous events, and I had this real moment where I just didn't know where things were going to go, and I was just so overwhelmed with everything going on that I just had to sit and process it for a while. Now, of course, I didn't want to cover Season 4 and it just all be about story, so I feel like it's important to, off the cusp here, just mention some of the events that I've played out as well throughout Living World Season 4, most notably in Dragonfall, where I took part in this massive meta event against Kralkatorrik, where everyone bundled together, you're attacking the weak spots, and essentially it ends in Kralkatorrik kind of going into this crystal cocoon, which kind of adds a bit more depth to the story itself, which I really, really enjoyed. And right now, as much as every single part of me is telling me not to do it, I'm working through the Living World Season 4 Sky Scale achievements. Even though it's a grind, I am determined to get my Sky Scale this way because to be honest, I just want it at this point, and I don't want to jump to Thoto. I feel like I'm just cheating the system that way, so it would be nice to have a Sky Scale at this point. It would make getting around the map a lot easier. And whilst we're talking about Dragonfall, it was really cool to see the different zones split into the different types of magic and different types of essentially elder beings that you've come to face before. It's quite clear that Balthazar's influence is here, Mordramoth's influence is here, and Zhaitan's is here as well, all mixed together in some kind of messed up cocktail. And you can see the devastation of the land and just how everyone's scraping together to try and get through it, essentially. But like I said, it's almost impossible for me to remember and cover everything. So if there's anything I've missed out that you feel should have been added into the video, then leave it down below in the comments. But all in all, Living World Season 4 isn't just good storytelling to me, it's powerful. It blends world-scale threats with deep personal struggles. These struggles shape characters who feel alive, and the relationships feel genuine that you create. It made me laugh, it definitely at points felt like it made me cry, I definitely shed a tear here, and it also made me angry in certain spots as well for the emotional toll that it puts on you. One thing is for sure though, it has made me fall even more in love with Guild Wars 2, and if someone asked me why Season 4 feels like an emotional roller coaster, well, I would say it's because it never once let me forget that even in a world of gods and dragons, it's the people that matter the most. With that said, thank you so much for watching the video. If you do enjoy, please consider leaving a like rating, subscribe for more Guild Wars 2 content, and I'll see you in the next video.